Hello everyone and welcome to our virtual cooking class. I'm mealtime mentor and registered dietitian Casey, and I'm so excited today to be joining you in your kitchen from the Festival Foods Test Kitchen for our cooking class. So let's get started. If you do have any questions as this goes on, if you're in the live class, feel free to just use that question and answer function. If you're watching this afterwards on demand, please reach out to us at askfestivaldietitians.com. So today we're making a fun date night in meal. We're going to make a salmon fettuccine Alfredo, and then we're going to pair that with a winter Aperol Spritz. Always fun to make a new cocktail at home. So I'm going to get started right away with our salmon. So I have a baking sheet here. I'm just going to coat this with cooking spray. I should also mention what I already have going is my oven is preheated to 450, and I have some water boiling for our pasta. So I've got my baking sheet prepared. I'm going to add my salmon fillets to the baking sheet. We're using about a pound. And then I'm just going to season this a little bit with some salt and black pepper, keeping it simple. Lots of other flavors that are going to come later with our pasta dish. All right, so that's it. I'm just going to toss our salmon in the oven now, and we're going to let that cook for about 10 to 12 minutes. I'll check on that. When the salmon's done, it'll be nice and opaque, and then the internal temperature will reach 145 degrees Fahrenheit. So my water is nice and boiling here, so now I'm going to add my pasta to the water. Today I'm using a fettuccine, of course, to make it a classic fettuccine Alfredo. I always like to break my noodles before I get them boiling. A couple of reasons. One is it just fits in the pot better. I feel like it cooks faster. I don't know if that's actually true, but so if you want to break it, you can. There are some believers that you should never break pasta, so do what you'd like with that. But we're going to let this cook until the pasta is done. All right, so while that's working over there, I'm actually going to get started with our drinks. So like I said, today we're making a winter Aperol Spritz. You've probably heard of a classic Aperol Spritz, which uses the Italian liqueur Aperol. It has a really nice kind of orange rhubarb flavor. It also has a little bit of a bitter taste to it, which is really tasty in this drink. So I've got some glasses here that I've filled with ice. So to this, I'm going to add, of course, our Aperol. It's a nice, bright, fun color, too. All right. I'm also going to add some cranberry juice. This is where our kind of winter flavor comes in. Same amount of cranberry juice, about 2 ounces, as that Aperol. I love that really deep orange-red color that we get from that. I'm going to add some champagne. We're going to add a little extra of the champagne. We're going to add 3 ounces for each. This is something that seems really fancy, like this is something that I would probably order at a restaurant, but it turns out it's really pretty simple to make at home. I'm using a Brut champagne, which is pretty dry. So obviously, if you prefer, definitely just make or use a sweeter champagne. And then I'm going to add some club soda just for a little extra fizziness. Just about 1 ounce of that. All right, we'll give that a stir. And then I'm also going to prepare a garnish for these drinks. I'll clean up a little bit of that mess I made from the drinks. So today we're going to garnish with some orange. So I'm just going to cut just a wedge for each. I'm just going to actually cut my wedge in half for a nice little triangle. I'll add a little orange in each, and then I'm going to garnish with some frozen cranberries. You could definitely use fresh if you prefer, if those are in season, of course. Frozen works just as well, and they also help to keep the drink cold a little bit. So there we have it. I have to take a sip. I'm a really big fan of the Aperol Spritz, so see how this is. That Aperol still comes through really well, but you get a really good flavor from those cranberries. If you wanted to make this a mocktail, you definitely could. I would just omit the Aperol and use orange juice in place of that. And then you could use some kind of sparkling apple juice or cider or grape juice in place of the champagne. If you wanted to, you could add also like a dash of bitters to kind of get that bitter flavor that the Aperol gives you. Bitters do contain some alcohol, about 35 to 45% per volume. But that's actually about the same amount as like a vanilla extract. So it really doesn't add that much if you just add a dash of it for the flavor, but you could obviously just omit that as well if you prefer. All right, I'm checking on our pasta here to see how that's going. All right, looking good. Needs a couple more minutes. While I have my cutting board here, I'm actually going to go ahead and cut a lemon that we're going to use later for the garnish for our pasta. So same thing, I'm just going to do wedges. If you wanted to, of course, for the garnish for the drinks, you could do something fancy like an orange twist or things like that. Play around with that and see what you like. All right, I'm going to move this out of the way to get ready for whenever our salmon is ready. So I want to talk a little bit about our salmon and our meat department here at Festival. So today, like I said, we're using just regular salmon fillets, about a pound of that. I just got that fresh from the case, but you could certainly use a frozen if you'd like, and just make sure that it's thawed beforehand. That really does make a good kind of easy meal to have on hand too, if you always have some salmon in the freezer and always have these other ingredients on hand as well. But our meat department is really great for finding things like this. We pride ourselves in our seafood. We are 100% sustainable with the seafood that we sell. We also have expert associates working in our meat department, which I found really helpful a lot. If you ever have a question about types of cuts of meat that you need to use for a recipe, or how you should cook a certain meat or seafood that you get, they can always be really helpful with that. So definitely check that out and ask questions if you have them when you're in the store. We also offer free freezer wrap at our meat department. So if something I like to do, if we have like a big sale on a certain meat that I like to stock up on that and get it freezer wrapped. Then I can just throw it in the freezer and enjoy it later. So that's available. Just ask for that at the counter. We also offer free knife sharpening. So if you ever want to bring your knives to get sharpened at the meat department, just drop them off, do the rest of your shopping, and come back and pick those up. I mentioned that we're using salmon, of course. If you wanted to make this vegetarian, you could certainly just omit the salmon. This works just fine on its own without a protein. You could also use whatever kind of plant-based protein you might prefer. Or if you wanted to do, maybe you don't like salmon or wanted to use a different type of meat, you could use chicken, of course. That's a really classic chicken Alfredo, chicken with fettuccine. You could also use shrimp. I think that's a really good addition too with our fettuccine Alfredo. Ooh, this is looking really good. Even though I broke the pasta, I think it still looks great. All right. Give that just a couple more minutes, and I'll talk a little bit about why we're using salmon. So, of course, salmon, as you've probably heard, it contains those heart-healthy fats. It is considered a more fatty fish than maybe like a white fish like cod or tilapia. But that omega-3 fatty acid is what's called an essential fat. It's a fat that our bodies can't make so we have to get it from food. But it's really good for heart health, especially, and lots of other things in our body. So it's a great source of that. Other fatty fish like tuna or mackerel are also really good sources of that as well. So definitely a great protein in this. All right, my pasta's looking great. If yours is still not quite done, definitely feel free to leave that on the stove for a little bit, but I'm gonna get this over and drain it. And I'm actually going to get started then on our sauce. So to get started, I'm gonna put this pan over medium heat, and I'm gonna add some butter to this, starting with a tablespoon of butter. We're gonna let that melt. So of course, we're making kind of our own Alfredo sauce today. If you prefer a jarred one, it's obviously going to be a little bit easier, or if you have your own recipe that you prefer, feel free to sub that in. But this is actually a pretty simple way to make your own at home. And like I said, a lot of these ingredients you probably already have on hand, so definitely a good option. All right, our butter's all melted here, so I'm gonna add now some minced garlic. I minced this garlic on my own, but you could definitely use a pre-minced garlic if you prefer. It'll taste just as good. You can find like a little jar, or sometimes it comes in like a squeeze tube in our produce department. So we're gonna let this cook just a little bit until that garlic gets nice and fragrant, which it already is. Oh my gosh, if you ever want to impress somebody that's coming over, literally all you need to do is just cook garlic and butter. It smells amazing. I don't know if they would really enjoy that for a meal, but I don't know, something to try. Okay, so we've got our garlic fragrant here. So at this point, I'm gonna add just a little bit of flour. If you prefer, if you want to make your meal gluten-free, use a gluten-free flour, and then of course you would use a gluten-free pasta as well. So I'm going to mix that in a little bit. I'm also going to add just a little bit of salt and pepper to this. All right, that's looking good. So at this point, I'm just gonna add my milk. I'm gonna add this gradually and just kind of keep mixing so it mixes together really nicely and doesn't burn. I'm using a fat-free milk. Use whatever milk you prefer. If you wanted to make this dairy-free, use a dairy-free butter alternative and milk alternative, and then later cheese alternative as well. All right, I'll show you kind of where I'm at right now. If you can see this, we're kind of getting like a nice kind of garlic. It almost looks like a garlic paste with that milk, so that's looking really good. So I'm gonna keep going with this. Gradually stirring this. I didn't mention either that I am using a medium to large pan for this because this pan is where our whole dish is going to end up. So you want to make sure you have enough room for that. All right, this is looking really nice. It's actually kind of thickening as I'm adding it, which is good because that's our next step. A little bit more here. milk in, so I'm just gonna keep stirring this. We want this to kind of come to a boil. Mine's kind of been bubbling throughout, but we want this to come to a boil. And then we're just really gonna let it cook until it starts to thicken up. So while we're waiting for this to thicken up, if you do like this recipe or a drink recipe, we have lots of other recipes available on our website, festfoods.com/meals. It's what we call our meal ideas site. It's got tons of different recipes that we've tested, so you know they're good. We also have nutrition facts available for all of our recipes, but you can either use our search function if you're looking for a specific ingredient that you'd like to use. You can also use, we have lots of different filters based on cooking method, diet, course, season, so you can search that way as well, but it's a great, if you're ever looking for new recipes, it's a nice kind of way to find those. So our sauce is thickening up nice and good here. And I think our salmon should be done pretty soon too. So let me check that. Oh yeah, okay, that's looking really good. I've got a nice opaque flesh here and it's starting to brown on top, so we are good to go. When we have it at that high temperature, that 450, it really doesn't take too long. So, get my oven there. So at this point, we have our salmon. Actually, I'm gonna grab that oven mitt again. At this point, I'm gonna go through and just flake the salmon with a fork. It should happen pretty easily if it's cooked all the way through, which this definitely is. Because we're gonna add this right into our pasta. If you prefer, you could also just serve this with the fillets on top of the pasta without it, but either way, I like to have it flaked throughout. It's a little less work when you're eating, it's all already combined, but up to you. All right, our sauce is looking really good. It's definitely thickening up, but I'm gonna give it just a little bit more time. Turn that heat down just a little bit. All right, back to our flaking our salmon. And like I said, with the seasoning, we just added a little bit of salt and pepper. Because we're adding this to another dish, it really doesn't need that much else. If you are making salmon for just to have on its own, I really love dill with salmon. That's my favorite. A lemon pepper would obviously be really good. Those are my favorite flavors to have with salmon. But the salmon too, because it has those omega-3 fatty acids and it is a little bit of a fattier fish, you get a lot of flavor just from the fat being there. So you don't need to do a ton to it. All right, our salmon is all flaked. I'm gonna do one more check. Oh yeah, this is great. All right, my sauce is looking really good. So I'm actually gonna turn this heat down. If yours is not quite thick enough, definitely feel free to keep it on the stove for a little bit longer. It really doesn't take that long, but mine's looking good. So at this point, I'm going to add our Parmesan, of course. I almost forgot. Most important part of the Alfredo, if you ask me. I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of a grated Parmesan. I just got this from our deli cheese island. You could definitely grate your own Parmesan if you prefer. And then, like I said earlier, if you would prefer this to be dairy-free, use a dairy-free cheese alternative. All right, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is what my sauce looks like now. It's got, I like that you can still kind of see little chunks of garlic in there. Not everybody would like that, but I like that. So I didn't mince my garlic super finely, but we've got the garlic going. I can see that. I like seeing little flecks of pepper in there, and then of course that cheese really just kind of pulled it all together and made it really creamy. Perfect. All right, so at this point we just need to put everything together. So I'm gonna grab my pasta over here. Gonna get that in here. I didn't do this, but if you want to keep your pasta from sticking while it's waiting, you could toss a little olive oil in it so the noodles aren't sticking together too much. got our pasta. I'm gonna add some baby spinach. It looks like a lot, but we all know what spinach does when it's cooked. It cooks down to almost nothing, right? So I'm gonna actually just toss these together. The spinach goes really great in this, but if you prefer, you could use a different veggie. Like I think broccoli would be really good in this. So play around with that. See what you like. Oh yeah, gotta get that sauce all coated on everything. And I'm leaving my, like I said, I turned my heat down to low earlier. So it's just kind of cooking a little bit. Really this step is just to cook your spinach to your desired doneness. So if you like a more crisp spinach, you could turn the heat off right now. If you wanted it a little more wilted, you could do that too. Or, you know, leave your burner on a little bit longer. All right, this is a good point for me. So now I'm going to turn my heat off, and then I'm going to add my salmon to the dish. Let's see. All right, this is cool enough for me to touch. All right. And then we just toss the salmon in. I like that it's got a bunch of different colors going on. We eat with our eyes too, right? So it's always nice when what you're making looks pretty. Alrighty, I think this is ready to serve. So I'm just gonna dish this up in a couple of bowls here. This is a debate that sometimes happens in my house. I use a bowl for almost everything that I eat. I don't know why, I just prefer having everything a little more contained. I know others prefer a plate, a little more open. So I'm curious what you guys prefer. That's why I like kind of the more like plate bowls is what we call them. It's kind of a good mix between both. You get the benefits of both. I guess the spork of the plate, if you will. Oh, this looks so good. All right. And then I'm just gonna garnish with, of course, a little extra Parmesan. And then those lemon wedges that I cut earlier. So there we have it. Just it looks, like I said, it looks a little fancier than maybe what I would normally make at home, but really not that difficult when you kind of just toss everything together, and even making our own sauce was not too hard. So thank you so much. I'm gonna leave you guys to join your meal, of course. You can't forget with your drink. We hope you had fun, learned a few tips and tricks along the way. Like I said, if you do have any questions or comments and you're watching this on demand, or maybe you think of it after the class, feel free to reach out to us at askfestivaldietitians.com. And then also, like I mentioned, check out festfoods.com/meals. We have tons of great recipes there for all different occasions. So check that out. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well at Fest Foods. We post lots of recipes there, and then you'll also be the first to hear about upcoming virtual cooking classes as well. Thank you.